if it's not one thing, it's the next. So in life, you gotta know how to be flexible, you know, and just be able to overcome obstacles. I recorded the entire weekly forecast, and then when I played it back, I realized something happened to the microphone, and so the whole audio experience was trash. And so, I could have crashed out, but I gotta go make the video again. So this one may not be as elaborate. I may not do the edit. I gotta put the camera in a different position so my hair is out of the frame. But we're here. Greetings, salutations, and good now. My name is Kevis Major, doing it major. Welcome back to the channel. If this is your first time here, we're doing it major using the insights of astrology. In today's video, let me just slightly adjust this so you guys can get the carrot top. Well, actually, let me just drop the top. All right, Medusa style. All right, so in this video, we're gonna be chopping up or dissecting, the happenings or what we could expect for this upcoming week, energetically based on, the astrological alignments. This week, we don't have much going on, so it's relatively calm on the surface. However, we do have some really influential, you know, aspects, alignments, and stuff happening. And so life is gonna life as usual. However, the sky is just not crowded with a lot of direct, non-stop exact aspects. And so lighter in volume, but still quite significant. We got Uranus moving into Jupiter, and this one is going to be one of the highlights along with the full moon in Scorpio. Okay, so we're in the Taurus season. If you don't know anything about the Taurus season, you could go check out my Taurus videos. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to edit and post them up, but I think you might be over here. Go check out the Taurus video. It's about grounding, it's about value, beauty, attraction, your attractiveness, being patient, longevity, substance, your money, your finances, your worth, what you value, and what you're actually willing to build and sustain over a long period of time. How you build up your body as well. As we move through, we're going to talk about the full moon, which is going to bring a bit more depth and power and intensity, intimacy, even sexuality when it comes to, this Taurus energy. Scorpio likes to dig deep, searching for truth, whether it is logical or more emotional, and actually more emotional because it's on the water side. And so any hidden dynamics or any hidden agendas tend to come to the surface around this time. Mercury is still in Aries for the rest of the week, but then it's going to slip into Taurus later in this week. And so, we're having this bold courageousness when it comes to our voice and how we show ourselves, hence the Aries appearance. And it just so happened that we calm it down with the Taurus energy. A bit of esoteric embodiment for you right there. So let's get straight into what we have for this week. The key themes, again, Sun in Taurus. So we're grounding your values, the Shur chakra. We're going to talk a bit about that and just your long-term stability. Again, Mercury in Aries, so courage when it comes to your speech, but then moving more towards grounded expression. We have Uranus entering Gemini, which is a major collective shift. We're going to talk about that because it's going to heavily influence our communication, information, how we learn, how we process that information, how we share that information and relate to each other. Venus is going to trine Pluto. Again, a powerful transit when it comes to, deeper attraction, intimacy, value, loyalty. Venus is squaring Node as well, so you need to look into the chart to see where your node is, because that's a bit more personal. Full moon in Scorpio is happening later in the week. I should have had the dates here as well. And the week is going to end off with Mercury conjuncting Chiron. So it gets a bit thick. All right, so before we go to the day-to-day energies, I really want to sit down and kind of break down my thoughts or what I was feeling about the Taurus energy going forward. You see, Taurus is associated with the throat chakra, um, and also the body. And so the throat chakra doesn't necessarily just speak about speaking, but it deals with expression in general. And so, just your deeper sense of expressing yourself honestly, asking yourself, what do you really need? What do you really want? Using your voice or your platform um, for valuable things or with value, and just becoming more aligned with the things that you're saying. I fall victim to this a lot. Like, I say a lot of things that I want to do, and I would like to do this, and this is my ideology, but do you actually live up to it? Can you sustain what you're saying for a long period of time with action? Also, what are you suppressing? What are the things that you really truly feel deep inside that you just never say to anyone, just because of certain, you know, um, insecurities or whatever is traumas or whatever is holding you back? We're going to talk about that deeper when we get to Mercury aspect in Chiron, because that's a major one for suppressed suppressed feelings and speech and expression. All right, so the third is about communication. Yes, your verbal communication and what you're saying, but also about integrity. Do you mean what you say? And do you say what you mean? Also, it deals with creative boundaries, your vibration, your song, your truth, your expression, and just tuning into reality, or just turning your inner reality, into outer form or outer expression. And so when you have a block throat chakra, it show up as fear of speaking up, fear of speaking in public, fear of speaking on camera, swallowing emotions, suppressing emotions, chronic people pleasing, not being able to say no, saying yes to everything when you actually mean no, fear of confrontation, shame around just even your own voice. Some people don't like to hear their voice on recordings, and they don't want to sing in public or in front of someone else, suppressing your creativity or your authentic, genuine opinion, difficulties asking for things that you need or want, over explaining yourself or having to prove yourself, not being able to speak with clarity and a sense of conviction, or sometimes even just saying very little because somewhere along the lines it's just painful to express what you need. And so there's a lot of things associated with having a blocked choke chakra, and I could identify with a bunch of these stuff. And so these are things, or some of these things, I need to continue to work on. We are all on this journey together. In modern life, a blocked throat chakra, again, happens through trauma, social conditioning, especially in these times where there's cancel culture, and you could get shadow banned for saying certain things, or people could look at you weird in society for your views and opinions, and you could even get physical. You could get lost, imprisonment for having certain views and stuff like this, being rejected from the tribe, persecution and stuff like this. And there's also a lot of overstimulation and hyper self-consciousness because of the times that we are living in. And so a lot of people are living out of alignment. Like, it's really easy to live out of alignment. And so this week there's some major questions that we could ask ourselves. Sorry, we got the fowls in the back because it's 3:36 a.m. And so, yeah, having a late night, early rise. What truth has been sitting in your throat? What are the things you're not expressing? What needs to be expressed honestly? The things that you're keeping down inside of you. And what part of your voice has you dimmed? Where have you been toning it down to appease others, versus, okay, altering your message to make yourself a better presenter, or for self-growth, I remember I had one point in time where, my brother offered me a piece of advice because before I used to make my astrology videos, I never used to make notes. So I used to just be freestyling and ranting, and he was like, dude, you're coming on as an astrologer, you should make notes and be more presentable versus, just kind of going off of the top. And so, that was a powerful piece of advice. However, it caused me, and so it didn't cause me to dim my light per se, but just fine tune it, right? And so, which parts of your voice has been dimmed, and how could you brighten it up and fine tune it? Okay, so we're gonna move forward and get into the day to day, but just wanted to highlight that Taurus energy gives us, Taurus season again gives us this opportunity to continue to work on any blockages that we have around self-expression, and this one could be hard because you need to get vulnerable. Taurus energy deals with relationships as well, those things that you have to sustain over a long period of time. And so to sustain a relationship, it needs to be, or it should be founded in honesty, even when it comes to money and different assets and stuff that you could accumulate. If it's not built on a good foundation of integrity and good values and morals and stuff like that, there's shaky ground. So again, a healthy throat chakra is not about being loud, it's not about being rambunctious, but about just being clear, truthful, grounded, and aligned with self and your goals. All right, so let's start off with the 27th of April. This one is a big one. Uranus enters Gemini. This is the biggest shift of the week, and this is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to this transit. Uranus entering Gemini is a beginning of a new era when it comes to communication, media, thought, intellect, ideologies, information, education, technology, language, transportation, local networks and organizations, politics, and even when it comes down to the anatomy, it deals with our nervous system and even the veins and blood flow and stuff like this to a certain extent, because of the influence of Mercury. Uranus is a disruptor, it shakes things up. It's about awakening or revealing innovations, making changes, chaos, but what happens to overcome chaos, like the liberation. It accelerates, and there's a lot of innovations and changes when Uranus is around. Jupiter rules the mind, okay? Speech, communication, curiosity, ideas, messaging, exchange of information, the way how we process information as well, and even transportation. And so together this is a long-term cycle and change in how we think, process information, communicate that information, and turn our ideas into reality. And so this transit doesn't just affect us this week, but it's going to be a longer chapter, actually a whole book. So on a personal level, we need to ask ourselves how we could be more mentally flexible, how we could adapt our communication style, how we could have a healthy nervous system, how we could calm ourselves down, how we could not be overstimulated, how we could not be thinking too much, and how could we process all of this information with speed, with accuracy, and how could we use it in a way that's really useful. There's going to be a upsurge of a lot more distractions and things that could get us overstimulated, things that could be taking our attention, aka distractions, things that are going to make us nervous and exhausted mentally. And so we need to be grounding ourselves throughout this transit. This is going to be crazy. Like, if social media and the internet is already such a wild place right now, just imagine Uranus going into Gemini, right? On the brighter side, we're looking for some brilliant innovations and insights, but again, that has to be harnessed on a personal level, because on a global level, I think we're pretty much screwed. Okay, so the Taurus season, when it comes to this particular transit, um, kind of just stay in the body, your exercise, your grounding, your meditation, your breathing, and kind of just staying off of the internet, to be fair. All right, on the 28th, we got Venus is going to be trining Pluto. This one is a sort of ticklish aspect because trines are gifts. Trines are usually positive, but Pluto is the planet of doom, gloom, death, and destruction. So it's going to want to break something down, but build it back stronger with more integrity, with clarity, um, with honesty. And so this is a powerful alignment this week when it comes to your attractiveness, your attractive ability, your magnetism, your relationships, your harmony, pleasure, money, finances. Um, Magnetic attraction, but how do you achieve this magnetic attraction? You would have had to be putting in the work, right? And so this week offers you that opportunity to continue to dig deep emotionally and to see what needs to be broken down in order for you to have the type of love life or financial life that you truly desire. Tapping into those strong desires of what you really want, when it comes to loyalty, intimacy, and just a nice, loving, existence on this planet. It's bittersweet because on the surface, yes, there's the sweetness, but Pluto still wants substance and depth. A heavy Scorpio energy here, so realness and just the kind of connection that could penetrate, appearances or just finances and, different types of, superficial things that people, that is also part of your attractiveness, if that makes sense. So this could be a beautiful time for healing relationships, deepening trust, you know, emotional honesty, and just reclaiming self-worth and understanding what or who um, truly has your heart, or who heart you want to truly have. Um, Financially as well, this could be a good time, so you could be a bit more strategic. Again, the planet of doom, gloom, death, and destruction, things could break down, or it could offer you the ability to transform or change things in a radical way, with a stronger foundation to catapult you into a more prosperous place. So you may see more clearly what you want to invest in, and what you want to take away some of your power from. All right, on the 29th, another powerful aspect for Venus when it squares the node. You need to tap into your personal chart to see where the node is or where your nodes are, because the node deals with, I don't really like to talk about nodes in general readings, but nodes deal with fate and destiny and your higher calling or your higher purpose. And so squares are usually more difficult alignments, but positive all in all, because the challenge or the tension helps you to, it challenges you, and so you grow from these challenges if you could get up and walk again. Right? And so this is going to bring a bit of tension around, again, your values, your relationships, attraction, magnetism, comfort, attachment, but also your destiny and your higher calling. And this is where your heart has to make a choice between what you're comfortable doing, what you're familiar doing, what you think that you want, versus growth, versus where destiny or fate is willing to take you, providing that you could kind of give up your comfort zone, right? So it's not about dropping your standards, but it's just about seeing where you could have more meaningful, deeper alignments once you could let go of you know just the familiarity. Now if you're familiar to great, amazing things, then kudos for you. But a lot of us are just into certain cycles, whether it may be toxic or just not um, at a standard. I don't want to use standard, but just not ideal for what you want. And so a question that may come up is, am I choosing comfort over evolution? Am I attached to this person, place, or thing because it's healthy, or is it because it's just familiar? It's just a routine. It is a pattern, and so this is this alignment to square with the node. Are you valuing the right things, or do I need to make certain alterations, and go through discomfort and detachment and maybe no relationship, and adjusting my values in order to eventually value the right thing or find the right person, place, or thing, environment, situation that's conducive for what you want ultimately. All right, we're gonna fast forward to May 1st when we're gonna experience the full moon in Scorpio. This is an emotional climax to the week. Now I know that we skipped a few days because those days don't have anything major going on. But on May 1st, we got the full moon in Scorpio. And I could already predict that this one is gonna kick my ass. But let's get into it. So the full moon in Scorpio is usually, it tends to be a revealing moon because Scorpio deals fixated water. So it's all about deep depths of a person, place, situation, circumstance, or situations, and it could get quite deep. Humans are complex, and when you put two humans together, then it makes even more complexity. And so the full moon is going to reveal power dynamics. That's a usual one, but hidden feelings, hidden agendas, sexual energy, sexual stress energy, emotional entanglement, trust issues. Is going to be a quite vulnerable time if you have a situationship or partnership or even a relationship. It could be a beautiful time, or it could just be an intense time, or it could be a bit of both, where jealousy, obsession, certain fears of betrayal or abandonment, and just deeper truths that can't be buried are going to be revealed at this time. And so Scorpio is not a casual sign, right? Scorpios in general, they could keep it casual, but they're not a casual sign. They're always about what's beneath the surface, or they may just run away from getting there, but that's where they actually want to go, right? And so what's really happening here, what's happening behind the layers. And so Taurus asks us about, what do you value? What do you need to feel secure? What can we build? What feels safe and stable and loyal? Scorpio wants to know, what am I actually, being bonded to? What's actually behind all of this? What am I really attached to? And can I trust a person, place, or thing to deeply, merge with them, or connect with them on that type of level, right? We could go a lot more deeper into this because it's a whole spectrum from your finances all the way to relationships, but just the things that you build over a long period of time, right? Your value, your wealth, and your possessions. And so again, what's the deeper layers behind all of these things? What's the truth? What's the power dynamic? When we tear back all of the superficial layers, what are actually supporting all of this. And so this week is going to be quite important when it comes to being conscious of sexual energy, not just in the terms of physical sense, but just connecting with other people, places, things, circumstances, and situations on a deeper level, subconsciously, energetically, emotionally, and even physically. Scorpio reminds us that the draining of energy is not just physical, right? But it's, again, all of these things: emotional, energetic, psychological. It's binding, it's revealing, it's transformative. And so to penetrate another person deeply is not just about the body, but it involves energy exchange, being vulnerable, having trust, power, attachment, and influence. And so the full moon is going to reveal where sex or these sort of connections are used just for escaping a person's reality. Like, I'm just gonna connect with you and do this so I could escape what I need to work on over in my space. um and so there's a lot of times where intimacy is lacking honesty, Um, so there could be strong desire. However, emotional maturity or capacity or capability is weak. And we are power, there's just a power imbalance, right? Um, and so that has to do with standards and, you know, anyway, we are attraction, our attractiveness is deep, but trust is questionable. And, January star, like I'm experiencing a lot of this. Anyway, so Taurus brings attraction, beauty, sensuality, a sense of stability and loyalty. But Scorpio wants to know if it's trusted, you know, if situations change and circumstances change, the foundation, can you continue, producing value under, change circumstances or change conditions? Or was it just, a show, and then when things get hard or when things get difficult or when things get intense, Scorpio energy, you fold and you switch up. And so Scorpio brings tests and trials and, different things to, you know, test to see if you're going to fold under pressure. And so what does these true connections really require? Not just about chemistry, not just about desire, but about truth, about honesty, about maturity. And so this time, you got to be quite careful about how you connect with different people, places, and things, circumstances, situations. Whether you're being celibate, you're retaining, you're incel, or you're in a relationship and you're having nice, um, intentional intercourse. This alignment is about being more conscious of who or what you give or receive, that type of sexual energy to, and to see if it is or not is necessary, or if it's just repression or suppression, or you're just not being aware of certain energies in general. And then the week tops off, well, the full moon also has Mercury conjuncting Chiron, which is also a big placement, a big aspect when it comes to healing, especially around the throat chakra. I need to slow down when I'm saying chakra. So Mercury deals with thinking, communicating, and processing information, and Chiron, brings healing or the opportunity for us to overcome insecurities, traumas, and painful experiences through the sign that it's aspecting. And so all of this is happening in Aries. It's going to be associated with the ego, just the fear of speaking up, speaking directly, speaking confidently, talking about old things that hurt you, old traumas, times when you were rejected or mocked or shut down. And so there's a lot of opportunity, let's say, for healing through speaking your truth, right? However, all of this is happening in Aries, so it could be a bit impulsive, it could be a bit blunt, it could be a bit bold. However, that's just what is required. And so Chiron, the wounded healer, is about overcoming mistakes, and so you might need to feel uncomfortable, when you're overcoming these mistakes. It's like you go to the hospital for injury, and while they're trying to make the injury better, you feel a bit of discomfort while you're overcoming that issue. And so May 1st, Mercury and Chiron gives us that opportunity. And then the week tops off with, Taurus moving, not Taurus, sorry, I'm tired. Mercury moving into Taurus. That happens on May 3rd. That's just a bit outside the scope of our weekly. No, it's just on the cusp. Alright, so we could talk about it. So Mercury is in Aries right now. Our thinking, communicating, how we process information is a bit erratic. It's a bit impulsive. It's a bit all over the place. Aries likes to spark and initiate and create. And so we're just trying to spark things and create things and be bold and courageous. And, a lot of that could just lead to us um, may not saying the most polished thing or being the most political correct, right? We may make mistakes and regret what we say later. And so, Aries is asking us to speak directly and to speak quickly and think quickly and boldly. However, um, as it shifts into Taurus, we need to have a bit more substance and a bit more meat. Communication, should slow down, um, and be more rooted in value and substance, and not just the ego and the who I am, but more what value you're bringing, right? So it's about projecting value through what you're communicating about. Okay, so let's get into some practical stuff to help us as we navigate this week. Number one, open the throat, the throat chakra. Pause. Okay. Um, it's about being able to be honest, um, use your voice to build and to bring value, and not suppress your truth or your own opinion. And so this one may be a bit difficult. You could start journaling, you could, find a secret place. People go speak to themselves in the mirror. Are you talking to me? Are you talking to me? And you go build your confidence in those spaces, or just find places, people and spaces that are open to you opening up. So you could get a therapist, or you could get a counselor, or you could find someone who you could talk to, maybe even create an imaginary friend. But there's some things that we've been suppressing deep down inside that we need to start learning how to express. Mercury in Chiron gives us that opportunity. It may be difficult, but the opportunity is there. And so, maybe just find one thing this week that you've been suppressing that you want to express. Number two, ground your nervous system. While Uranus is moving into Gemini, we're going to be overstimulated, right? And so reduce any unnecessary overstimulation, whether it may be social media, the doom scrolling, and mainly social media, the news, what else, gossiping, drama. You just need less mental clutter, more silence, and just be careful about your information intake. Let it be quite intentional. And maybe we should go back to reading books at this time. Number three is to watch the body. Taurus, is the throat chakra. It's about expression. It talks about the body, something that you build over time. And so it wants water, it wants movement, it needs rest, it needs better meals, slower meals to physical grounding, good music, dancing, touch, breath, nature. And so let's give the body what it needs. Number three, we need to be honest in relationships. Ask yourself, what do you really need? What are you really feeling? What do you really want? What do you really value? What are you attached to? Who do you want to be attached to? Where are you out of alignment? And how could you get yourself more in alignment? And so you could be your authentic self going into, intimacy. Do you just want to be intimate with a person? Is it a real partnership that you desire? Just figuring out what you truly, truly want and being able to express it honestly without the fear of, the repercussion, right? Number five, respect sexual energy. Do not be careless where depth is required. Be aware of what sex attraction, emotional merging, or retention means this week. So just be more conscious of your sexual energy, not just, physically, but just that energy inside of you that is, encouraging you to do things in order to be a more suitable mate, right? And also just your raw creative energy to just go and create something out of your mind. Okay, number six is to speak with courage and then substance. We still have Mercury, right? Mercury in Aries, boldness when it comes to communication, um, quick thinking. However, we're moving into that grounded time, so we need to show some substance and a bit more meat, be a bit more grounded in reality when it comes to how we communicate. All right, so the closing message, you might want to get a piece of paper and a pen to write this down. It's not going to be for the faint of heart, sorry. However, it does give us a good opportunity to build Taurus energy. Okay, so opening up the voice, grounding, truth, respecting emotional and sexual depth, becoming more conscious in relationships and how you relate to others, and just preparing for big mental shifts in the collective conscious. Um, Taurus is asking, what do we value enough to build? Scorpio wants to know, who do you trust to build these things with or around? And Uranus, um, is just signaling a collective change. Okay, so major farewell until we meet or greet again. I'm happy that I made this video. Hopefully the audio is a lot better than the last one. Alright, we got to go. And I'll see you guys in the next video.